Doing pretty well. Yeah. How about yourself? Yeah. Yeah. You seemed a little on edge when I messaged you.
Last week's show, so we just kind of agreed not to put out a half-hearted show. And anyway, moving on. Pretty excited for this week. Before we do jump into anything,
Yeah, I just fixed it.
okay. Before we do jump into anything, I just want to give a little shout out to our sponsors. First one being Audible. If you go to audibletrial.com/the CWL podcast, you get 1 month free of Audible, plus one audiobook, two Audible originals. You can use Audible on your phone, tablet, or Alexa, and you can just listen to the amazing audiobooks. There's Game of Thrones on there, Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter, like all of the classics. Go to audibletrial.com/the CWL podcast to get your first month's free trial. Sponsor number 2, Humble Bundle, newest way you can support the CWL. Helps if I can even say the name of our podcast, right? The newest way that you can support the CWL podcast is by clicking the Humble Bundle logo in the panel below. You will get over $100 worth of games for just $12 a month. Each month, you get a bunch of new games. This month actually includes Call of Duty Black Ops 4 for PC,
Dude.
but we're going to jump into PC talk a little bit later on. But retails for $60 on Steam, and the other one I can't remember the name of that you use on PC, and you can get it for $12 as well as 5 other games. All you have to do is click the link below. If you're watching on YouTube or on Twitch, it should be right below. Even just a click, you don't have to actually buy, but just a click helps support us. Before we do jump into our guest, Lando, I believe he's going to join us here in a couple of minutes.
Yeah.
Did you get a chance to watch Game of Thrones this past week?
I did. I actually watched it on Sunday.
Holy shit.
It was after it aired, but it was on Sunday.
Okay.
Yeah, I was well, as you know, I was busy moving this week. I didn't get to catch it right. I made sure just to make you happy. Same day.
Good. How did you feel? I felt it was so much happened in that episode. I felt like it was quite rushed.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It definitely wasn't the best, but it was still good. Like,
Yeah.
I definitely agree with some of saying.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was. I don't know. It was just a weird episode, in my opinion. So, did you get to see Endgame as well?
Yes, actually, yes. I went to see that on Thursday, I believe. So that was the first day that I started to move and everything, but took some time out. Well, I say some time out. I went at 11 o'clock at night to go watch it, and yeah, loved it. Really enjoyed that. Did you see it yet?
Yeah, I saw it, and
Okay.
I felt like, without giving away too much, some of the things that happened were just like, oh, okay, this actor's contract is ending, so we're going to kill them off. Oh, this actor's contract's ending, so we're going to kill them off. It wasn't like it happened to happen. It, to make the story flow.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Actually,
but I think they just did a fantastic job of doing it.
Oh yeah, it was a great movie, and I'm definitely going to watch it probably at least 5 or 6 more times over the next couple of years. But another thing I'm super looking forward to, Spider-Man.
Yeah, the new one.
The one that's going to
I forget the name
set
as
in
well.
Rome, I believe. Yeah.
Oh really? So I've not actually looked at anything to do with it, but I'm just excited.
They released a new trailer the other day, and it actually had Tom Holland.
Okay.
No, not Tom Holland. What's the Spider-Man actor's name? Is it Tom Holland? I thought Tom Holland was Loki. No. Okay. Anyway, it had the actor. He came on and said, before you watch this, you need to watch Endgame, because there was a lot
okay.
of end-game spoilers. I just thought it was kind of funny. That,
Yeah. I mean, it makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, I would hate to have, and you go weeks not getting it spoiled, then you watch a trailer for the next movie, and then that's what spoils it for you. That would really suck.
That would be hilarious.
Yeah, that really would. Anyway, so are we ready to bring in our guest for this week? Do you have a little spiel before we bring him in?
I mean, not really. I didn't have much time to prepare, obviously, for tonight.
Okay.
But I mean, what I can say is, for most of the people in the chat right now, you probably already know who he is. Mr. Landon Sanders, also LandO, is going to be joining us. He is also an esports caster, analyst. You'll be seeing to your screens on Twitch a lot of Call of Duty. And yeah, so without further ado, I think we're really excited to have him on. We're going to be talking about some CWL London action, and then franchising talk, which times at this, and
not every
into yeah, pretty much, and then obviously jumping into a bit more of a Q&A with him as well. So go ahead and type in the chat stream, and I'll be writing them down. If we don't get to them straight away, we will be getting to them at some point.
Right.
I'll get him in here.
Hello.
Hello. How are you doing?
Pretty good. How are you guys doing?
Good, doing good. Sam's lagging a little bit today. I'm not sure what's going on with him, but
hold on one second.
We're doing good, man.
That's good to hear. I'm sorry, my audio is kind of messed up. I'm trying to allow for myself to hear you guys a little bit louder.
Good. Yeah, we had a bit of audio technical difficulties at the start of the stream.
Oh yeah.
I started the stream without checking because I literally finished work at 11 o'clock. So I finish work, race home, have to set everything up, and then get onto yours.
Right.
So yeah, I didn't check my audios before.
That's how it always happens, right? It's like you're super prepared for everything, and then it just happens to like just not work the one time that you were kind of prepared for it or whatnot. Yeah, that's electronics exactly are just not fun. They're just not a good time.
Right. Is my mic
a
little bit better now?
Yes, okay. You're back. I can see your cameras actually.
Oh, phenomenal. Whatever I did fixed it. So first of all, LandO, I just want to say thank you for the support that you've given us over the past about 10 weeks at this point, but 8 shows. We do notice you jumping in and out of the chats. We do really appreciate it. Any help that we can get at this point, it's just so appreciated. So thank you so much.
Oh yeah, no problem, guys. I think what you guys are doing is great. I think any content in regards to the Call of Duty esports scene, I want to try to be a part of it, if not try to help it in some way. So I think what you guys are doing is awesome. You guys have a really good product, and I'm happy to help. So glad to see stuff like this, kind of popping up and whatnot. So I think this is good.
Thank you.
Awesome. Well, again, yeah, we really appreciate it.
Yeah, sure.
So I don't know. Do you get to catch any of Optic Hex's podcasts at all?
I do, yeah. I haven't got to watch all of them, but I've watched like a fair amount. He's been uploading like a lot more recently, but yeah, I think the last one I watched was the one with Hutch. I'm not sure if that's like the last one that's been uploaded, but
I think there's been one since then. But so you're going to be familiar with this question. The question is, who are you today?
Oh, okay. I see. I got you now. Okay, I see. I kind of get an idea where that comes from.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would say I'm an esports broadcaster and on-air talent. I work for UMG Gaming. I'm just turned 23 years old as of almost a week ago. Well, thank you. I appreciate it. And yeah, that's kind of it. I mean, I kind of devote a lot of my life to esports. I'm a college student at Full Sail University studying broadcasting. So so yeah, that's kind of it, I guess you could say.
Is that how you kind of got involved with Call of Duty? Because I know there was some LAN tournaments held at Full Sail at one point. And
so what's funny is that I had no ties to Full Sail during first event that I actually ever went to was in Orlando, and it was to a Full Sail tournament back in Ghost. I think it was the NA regionals for COD Ghosts. Yeah. And so that was like my first event that I'd ever gone to. And I was like, wow, this is unbelievable. Like I get to see all my favorite players. Plus, this is in Full Sail. Never heard of this place before. But I originally got my into the scene based off like updating people on Twitter, kind of letting them know about roster changes and stuff like that, which later developed me into casting some events for UMG, which I later worked for. So it kind of all started with Full Sail and it all started with UMG. And it's kind of funny how it kind of went in full circle that I would literally be working for UMG and going to Full Sail. So
right.
Yeah.
So do you work outside of the work you do with UMG, or is that's kind of your full-time job as much?
It's definitely my full-time job, but I do at some points I do outside work. So sometimes where I'm doing voiceovers or I'll do some side casts and stuff like that. But there may be even some separate shows. But yeah, definitely UMG is the full-time gig. So
okay,
fair enough.
Yeah, it's definitely a lot of fun.
So obviously you mentioned that that was one of your first events. So kind of walk us through. Obviously, you don't need to go step by step, but just more of like a TLDR of what happened from you going to that first event to getting to where you were at right now.
Yeah. So, like I said, I can kind of ramble, so I'll try to keep it like to a very bare minimum.
It's all good.
Yeah. So first event was UMG Dallas 2015. Got the call from someone at UMG, said, "Hey, we've seen a few of your casts. We'd like you to kind of get brought on." So I started working with UMG. I think I did 3 or 4 LAN tournaments for them. And then through being on UMG broadcast, then MLG decided to add me to the caster lineup. And then went from there for a few different titles, and then kind of branched off with stuff at UMG and started to kind of do my own shows and stuff like that, doing some casting for them as well. So it kind of started off with just casting a lot of local things, just kind of getting my name out there as much as I possibly could, getting added to the UMG rotation. Then MLG kind of spotted me out doing the same thing for them. And so yeah, it's kind of like a very brief, but like, the exact way of kind of how it occurred. So
yeah, awesome.
And so I do see, it feels like every day on Twitter there's another video coming out that you've done. So it does the studio, like, is that a studio? Is that a green screen? Like,
oh no, yeah, it's a studio. So that's the location that we have. That's in the Greater St. Louis area. We call it like the UMG studio, whatever you really want to kind of label it as. But yeah, that's where we do a lot of streams from. We do a lot of like weekly broadcasts with sponsors and stuff that I'm a part of for other games, and that's also where we host a few of our shows too, like the Dispatch. So
yeah,
okay.
I've had a few people ask me before, like, is it a green screen? I'm like, no, it's a real set. Like, I can touch it. It's physical. It's actually there. So, gotta be careful sometimes. But yeah, lucky enough that it's not a green screen. It is actually a full on location with cameras and great people. So
okay, perfect.
That's very cool.
And so going back a little before that first event, what was it that kind of led you to esports to start out with?
So, I first started watching Call of Duty specifically, or rather, first started playing it with some friends and like my dad. Like we used to play like PC games, so I first started playing Call of Duty Big Red 1. I played like some other games before that, like FPS related, and then kind of followed the competitive scene once Black Ops 1 hit for the MLG Pro circuit. Kind of watched a few of those events. I was so young, I had no idea what was really going on. So I say that I was really watching it, but it really wasn't anything. And that's kind of how I got involved with esports, was pretty much watching that, and then kind of, just followed it over time, realized, you know what, I kind of like this stuff a lot. Should probably talk about it. And then, started making YouTube videos, and it kind of went on from there. But yeah, good old MLG Pro circuit back in Black Ops 1. Those were the days.
So
nice.
If someone came to you now and said, how do I get to where you are? What is the advice that you would give them? And is there anything that you did you recommend they don't do, or something you didn't do that you recommend they do?
I mean, it kind of depends like what they want to do specifically. I mean, if you want to try and be a commentator, or if you want to try to be, a podcast host, whatever it really may be, I would say just try to, put together anything you possibly can. If it's, a product of like a show, if you want to be a producer, like, whatever it really may relate to being. Obviously, I've been more on the broadcasting side of things, but really for me, it was just like connecting with local people that not local in terms of like around my area, but like in terms of like, people who are kind of on the same level as I was. So like, contacting people saying, hey, would you like a free caster? I'll figure out how to stream it. I'll figure out how to commentate it. I'll get the teams involved. I'll organize it all. They're going to be like, yeah, why not? Like, this guy's willing to do this for free. Why not? And so that you do that, you get practice, and then over time, you work up, gain connections and stuff. So if I were to give any advice, I would just say, work on your craft and kind of realize where you are and kind of set high goals for yourself. There'd be times where I'd be like, you know what, I want to cast like 5 matches this week. Would it realistically be possible? And no, but I would try, anyway to try to make sure that would happen. So I would say, work hard, set goals that that maybe aren't broken, but you work hard enough to try to make sure that it's the case. And you just kind of keep working up. That's kind of like how it worked for me. I went from one tier to the next, casting online to LAN, and then from, UMG to MLG, and then CWL and stuff, and it kind of translated. So those are kind of like the little steps that I took, but it all requires that first step. It gets easier as time goes on, despite what people like to think. So
yeah, absolutely. And then just the second part of that, was there anything that you did you recommend people don't do, or anything you didn't do that you recommend somebody does do?
Anything I recommend people don't do. I think one thing that's kind of underappreciated is professionalism nowadays. I think a lot of people are willing to kind of, I think there's a difference between having like a business type Twitter and then having like your personal Twitter. I try to act as mine as more business. Like you're not going to see me tweeting out like, hey, at the store, like, or something random like that. Like that's not just the way that, like, I make my Twitter. I think professionalism, no matter what level you're on, people are going to recognize that and want to hire you. If you're interested in wanting to have a job or wanting to really kind of increase yourself, I think professionalism goes a really long way. And that starts on social media, which is exactly where the Call of Duty scene happens to thrive. Is pretty much on Twitter. That's where everything happens. Everyone talks about things. Where shows like this are obviously even announced, like, primarily. So I would say professionalism is something that I tried to accomplish super early on. Granted, it's not the easiest thing. You're never going to be perfect with it, but I think that's something that everyone should try to strive for, because I think that's something that a lot of people kind of overlook sometimes. So
yeah, I mean, there's definitely a difference between like the Call of Duty Ghost Maven to the Maven today. That's
right,
sure.
Exactly. Yeah, just a little bit of a difference. Yeah, even to broadcast, like, how events are run, like everything is professionalizing. And I know we'll be talking about franchising here in a little bit, but I think that kind of is the basis of why a lot of these things, why a lot of companies, casters, even, not necessarily Maven, but like a lot of people are trying to, become more professional with a lot of different things, just because you got a lot of big ballers coming into to esports with all the money that they want to invest and whatnot.
Absolutely.
So.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think it's obviously something that in general, when you, and again, we will get into this obviously a little later on, but just looking around at other esports and things, that is this.
Yeah.
Sense. So yeah, moving on a little bit, obviously, towards the end of the show, we probably are going to do a bit more of a Q&A with you to get a little bit more about you yourself. But of course, this past week we just had a pretty big event going on, CWL London. Did you make it out there?
I didn't, unfortunately.
No?
I wanted to, but was a little bit busy and stuff with work. So I would have loved it, especially after hearing the way that the crowd was acting for everything. I think I definitely would have thought twice if I got the chance. I probably would have done my best to make it out there. Those guys were
for sure
were crazy. So
awesome. Well, yeah. So I mean, obviously, me and Sam both from England, but are both living in North America. So neither of us were out there either. But honestly, like you said, the crowd was definitely a noticeable improvement from some of the last events for sure. And like it was just insane. Like there was, I haven't looked, but if it hasn't already been made, somebody needs to make a highlight reel of just the crowd alone. That event,
just all the chants, right? Just crazy. Like every little thing that they were throwing out there was fantastic. Like
exactly.
My favorite was the fuck off Maven. It was so funny, and every time he was like, "Yeah, okay, I'll leave. Bye."
Oh man,
he was such a good sport about it. He just took it all in his stride. It was so funny.
I think you have to at that point. You're just like, all right, well, they're not gonna they're not gonna shut up. So might as well just try to be on their good side, I guess, at that point. So.
But I mean, like, if you're trying to, like, if you're sitting at your desk trying to work, and then someone comes up to you and starts telling you to fuck off, like, it's gonna throw you off your game. So, like,
yeah,
it must have been hard for him. But
yeah.
So, looking at the pools, how they came out, was there anything that really stood out to you that was like, oh my God, this team did amazing. I expected them to suck. Or, oh my God, this team sucked. I expected them to do amazing.
I would say in terms of like major, like one team that I thought that I was absolutely going to make it, like no questions asked, even despite like the meta and all of those things. I really thought that Denial was going to make it out of pool, or I'm sorry, Denial. Luminosity. There we go. That was close.
Yeah.
Luminosity were going to make it out of pool B. I was looking at the wrong name. I thought that, even considering like the Rampart and how that was kind of a big impact on the team, I thought that they were at least going to make it, which pool B was my pool of death. I thought that was going to be the most hard pool to get out of, no question about it. But I thought they would probably take down Gingy. I thought they would take down Denial. And I thought they'd have a close game with Splice for maybe that first or second seed. So, like, while prediction-wise, my pool of death kind of worked out, I definitely didn't think that Luminosity would be on the other end of that. So, I might be missing one. Like, I thought Reciprocity would also kind of make it a little bit farther as well. Yeah, I can imagine, and especially with the crowd on their side too, that would have been amazing if they could have made a run. Kind of give them something to root on for. But I would say LG for me was probably my first.
Yeah,
fair enough. Yeah, absolutely. I think kind of going on to Reciprocity a bit more. Me and Sam both have ties with Tommy as well, and just looking at his Twitter and everything, he was super excited for that event. Really looking forward to it, and definitely wanted to be playing a lot more in front of the crowd for sure. And know that one.
Yeah. One thing to say about Rec though, I feel like first of all they had no game fives, which at Fort Worth they just, I think every match they
was a
played
game 5, right?
was a game 5. So I mean, I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing really, given where they placed, but I do feel like teams at Fort Worth were kind of like, oh my God, this Sorg player in Dylan is just like up in your face constantly and he just doesn't die. Whereas now I feel like, given that they've had more chance to scrim and things like that, I feel like they're more like they know how to deal with it a little better, so they're not caught off guard quite as much. So I do think that might be why.
And I was also a little bit worried to like invest a lot in Reciprocity after, like you talked about, like with Fort Worth, just because you go to that many game 5s, like one round or even like one game that just happens to not go that way. I mean, it's a totally different story. So that was one thing that I was a little bit worried with Rec, because like obviously super, solid placement at Fort Worth. They looked like a pretty good team. Like I said, Dylan was going off, but it's just really hard to invest in a team that wins in game 5s. That there's not really a whole lot of consistency that you could look forward to and be like, oh yeah, like that team, this is where they thrive. It's like, no, like they had a lot of close games. They closed them out, thankfully, in that situation for most of them. But yeah, that was one thing that I was a little bit worried about. But I didn't think that they would see that. Like, I didn't think it was going to be that big of a drop off. But
no, for sure. And like that was one of the things that we were kind of putting down to it as well, is the fact that they were a bit of a newer team. This time we were going to have a bit more practice and time to figure things out. So we were hoping for sure that they'd a little bit better than they did. And again, especially being their home turf, right?
Yeah.
I was just looking back because I personally attended Infinity 3, which was years ago now, back on Ghosts, and it was actually played in well, and Tommy was on Epsilon back then, and he finished in second place at that event. Back then was Merc, nameless, J-Cap, and Formal, which was crazy to be thinking about actually watching the other fact that Merc, who's there now casting the grand finals, last time I saw him was winning the grand finals. But yeah, I just remember like that hype train that Epsilon got after getting out of the group stages and everything else.
Yeah,
just being on that home turf again was so helpful. It didn't seem to out like that at all.
Yeah, it's pretty unfortunate. I thought that they could have had like a really good chance, because like everyone knows like those loser bracket runs and all those things, like how you kind of gain momentum yourself, but from the crowd and the way that they were cheering and how like those things, like a lot of people try to act like momentum isn't a thing. It's like, no, like obviously that plays a massive factor, especially whenever you have a crowd that's screaming behind you that wants to see you succeed. And and a lot of crowds, like at least from my experience at attending events, like you don't see too much booing, like unless something crazy happens, like no one really boos. London had no problem with that. Like they had no problem like booing people off the stage. Like they were tearing into Luminosity, who unfortunately had like a bad publicity type weekend in terms of who they eliminated and how they were winning series versus like FaZe, etc. So I felt kind of bad for them, but at the same time, like London had no problem with like trying to mess with other teams. So
yeah, I mean, I think Tommy's highlight of the weekend was when he was on stage
Yeah.
and we got the LG chant, right? So yeah, it was again. I think one of the biggest highlights for me, like I said before, was definitely the crowd there. I think at this point we could just talk about most of the night, but
yeah.
Moving forward, we also saw Team Envy Team Envy and is both finishing third and fourth position in Pool C there. How did you feel about that? Did you expect Team Envy to be at the bottom of their group?
In terms of like how that one went out, I thought that it was going to be a battle between FaZe and Envy for that spot. I really didn't think EG was really going to stand too much of a chance. I just didn't think they had enough slaying power to kind of deal with it. I liked FaZe's team. I wasn't like super convinced with them in terms of like how, like, I liked all their roles and how everything was set up, like after roster changes and stuff like that, how they were kind of added to the league. I liked the team. I just wasn't for sure in fruition on land how quickly they've had to adjust for most things, how they were going to perform. I feel like Envy was a little bit of a better team off the rip. So for that, to me, I would say I'm a little bit surprised, but not like ultimately. To see Envy, like technically by definition, like the last spot's a little bit surprising. It's based off one map. So they pretty much place the same way that EG did in groups. So can't really say a whole lot about that. But to see Envy kind of there's a little bit surprising, but I know they turned up in the losers bracket, which is kind of a decent indicator in terms of like slow start. Makes sense because they've never played on land before as a team. So they're kind of getting used to the new roles, getting Pharaoh and Decimate acclimated and stuff like that. So I was pleasantly surprised to see Envy make as far of a run as they did. But I gotta say, I was nice. It was nice to see FaZe kind of have an early start. It was unfortunate the way it closed out, obviously, but was a little bit surprised to see Envy not get out of groups though.
Yeah, for sure. And so actually touching a little on FaZe, obviously new roster and everything else. So I wanted to touch on this anyway, but Torch is actually just at chat as well. So he wanted to know what our thoughts are about Celia. And he said he has a ton of potential, but I feel like it hasn't shown. So personally, I think Celium, yeah, definitely, he's an awesome player. There's no doubt about it. Definitely has. Whether he needed maybe a little bit more time before hopping into certainly a tournament like CWL London, I don't know, but I mean, I think the real test is going to be, playing out these next couple of weeks and everything, just seeing a little bit more.
Yeah, I feel like it's a little bit early to like say like, oh, Celium's inconsistent. Like I know there's like one event which is kind of an outlier, but like the only other event that he played at that's like actually on an actual stage versus like top level competition was like what the qualifier, like Fort Worth you can't really count, World Gaming you can't really count either. I think those are the only other events that he's played in on land. So I feel like he has like a really high skill ceiling. I remember casting over Celium in Infinite Warfare. And just like the way that his movement worked, like all the things that he is really good at, I feel like can translate to other titles, which is really nice. Like there's some players who are just very, I don't remember like the term I used to use, but they're like kind of, I call them like Treyarch minded, or like they're really good at like one specific game developer's title. And I feel like for him, a lot of the things that he kind of carries over can translate into other titles, like movement, big factor in almost every single game. It obviously used to be really big back in Jetpacks more than less, but I don't know. I feel like Celium has a really good chance to be a solid player. He's a faster AR, which happens to be a perfect kind of role right now in terms of like how the MaDaC plays. So I don't know. I feel like, while he didn't have the greatest event in terms of London is considered, it's early, new team, new roles. You're trying to figure out stuff. Plus, you're playing alongside Scraps, who is one of the best MaDaC players, probably a guy who's going to be taking a lot of kills. You're not really familiar with a lot of your teammates. So I'm going to give him a little bit of a pass. It's a new location, new teammates. There's a lot of like little new factors there for him. I'm very interested though. Whoever was kind of bringing that up, I am interested though to see him play in the pro league. I think that inconsistency could be a thing, but for the most part, I think it's a little bit too early to call like whether or not the inconsistencies are there or what's really going to be the case. But I think Celium though is going to be a really important factor for FaZe. I think if he's not like playing up to the way that he was at least at times in the PLQ, they're really going to need like that secondary, thirdary player alongside Scraps and whoever you want to throw in this second role, like Azuma or Zero or even Asim from time to time. So I think he could be a good player though, but I think he's going to be a really big cornerstone to their success if he can show up or not.
Yeah, I feel like the Pro League, you have such like this magnifying glass on you, and like everything you do is just amplified. So I think he really needs to have a big, whether it's week or 2 week, I can't remember off the top of my head, but just a really good kind of period of time to really shake off the dust a little bit. Not, I wouldn't say the dust. I think that's a bad phrase, but you know what I mean, kind of shake off the nerves, I guess.
Right.
Yeah. And really show the skill he has, because he obviously does have the individual skill, and just needs to show it on the big stage.
Yeah, no, for sure. And so, like, just to answer you, what you were kind of asking there. So yeah, it's next week that, and FaZe are actually starting up versus you. Monday they then play LG on Tuesday, Optic on Wednesday, and pretty big week up.
I think it's gonna be a good game for them to start off versus UIU as well. That's gonna be a decent matchup. I'm not gonna say anything exactly, but I've heard that UIU might be making a change here soon, so I'm not sure like how that's gonna be a factor. So they might be able to play off against a team who's maybe not as confident themselves, kind of changing up a position, maybe interesting. So I think that'll be nice though. I think that'll be good for them to kind of get well acquainted, get that first match out of the way, and then kind of move forward with the Pro League. But I feel like it's a good way to start off versus a team like versus like that. So, but they're a good team. Like UIU is a great team. I think they're only going to improve. It's just I think that'd be a good game for them to kind of start off with maybe someone who's on the same playing field rather than starting off versus like a Hunter T would not be the greatest situation in the world if they're trying to like get back on things. So
yeah, no, for sure. And yeah, I just wanted to address as well the fact that you said about UIU's possible change. Definitely no spoilers here.
Nope.
Hunter is in the chat.
We love Hunter.
We do love Hunter. Hunter was on the show obviously a couple of weeks back, and he himself almost let something slip.
Oh,
we won't get into
it. Okay.
We had a conversation with him about it.
Okay. Me and Hunter might be on the same frame of mind. I don't know. Maybe not. Who knows?
No, this change has already happened.
Oh,
now,
okay,
so.
Okay, I gotcha. Right.
Yeah, so yeah, I mean, obviously the one thing that was not too surprising about that pool, United 2-1 the Envy.
Yep.
Lost 3-1 to Envy. Yeah, so obviously not very surprising there. I think the biggest thing was obviously then going into the winners bracket and getting 3-0'd by 100.
Yeah, that was a big loss, that's for sure. But I don't remember like all the map scores that happened with that. It's obviously a 3-0. It's probably a closer 3-0 than like what it maybe indicates. But that's the thing that I'm kind of worried about for a lot of teams. I know we'll obviously talk about like Hunter T's run that they go on and stuff like that. But it's just such a scary team. If they can beat you in a search and destroy or catch you off guard in that first hard point, there's a lot of teams who kind of rely on the S&D or that first hard point. It's kind of like one of the two. If they can take you out in one of those things, it's like obviously not the greatest team in search and destroy, but their respawns are just so good. If they can kind of get you in that sandwich of like not getting to a game 5, they're usually in a really good spot. So I feel like United, I don't know. It's hard to say. Like obviously Simp had a wonderful performance. Like we couldn't even, I couldn't even put into words like some of the things that he was doing and how impressive it was for it to be his first major event to perform that way. But I think that was a perfect pickup that they had. And debating on how much United can improve, I'm worried about like if that was their peak or if they have something else. I really think that was their peak performance that they're going to have. Maybe not, and depending on how the roles are going to work. I know like 102 was pulling out like the quad AR setup. I'm not sure how United's particular players would roll with that kind of setup.
Yeah,
but I will say I think United is still one player away. I think they're one player away from logistically being like in the conversation of like, yeah, they could probably win. Like, and it just is a shame because of how close they've gotten in multiple tournaments. They've always like last year, it was like the top 6 stigma. Like they just can't get past like the respawn teams. They can't get over that hump. And I feel like this year, second, while it is unfortunate, like I think I saw a tweet from Clayster today. It's like every night he just dreams about winning a championship, what it's like to hold a title again. And it's like, that's going to be a big driving factor for them. And being as close as they are, maybe that, in this next roster change period that may come up, they might want to make that, player for player, whoever it would be, I don't know, but and I think that they're really close. But I was really impressed though with the United this weekend. But I know I kind of ramble on, but
it definitely wasn't a bad run, even after dropping down into the losers bracket. Obviously, still made it all the way to the
grand final.
Losers final.
Grand final.
Oh yeah.
Keep on
the grand
scrolling.
final. Yeah. So I mean, obviously they made a pretty good run after that, to say the least. But I mean, just look at that's the thing. Like, obviously, they're possibly needing one more change within that team. The problem, I think, at this point is who would it be? Because obviously, Abizi and Simp. I mean, at this point, I feel like you can't even take these guys out of the roster.
Yeah.
Both performing very well. They're both putting up doing the job that they're doing. But then, I mean, Acides and Pristini pretty much come as a package at this point. And then obviously Clayster seems to be pretty much grandfathered into the roster. Yeah. So it kind of comes down to that point where where does the change come in? And like, who would you think would be the best option for them to make a change with?
So like for the names that you list, I think you have to keep RC's on the team, just Mr. Consistent. I know he hasn't been playing as great as of recently, but like Vegas, superstar performance, one of the biggest carries that we've seen in a very long time. You obviously have I forget what they're calling him, but like basically the Simp and Abizi combo. You can't really get rid of that either. So that's 3 out of the way. And then you have the phenom, as I like to call him, Clayster. He's the brand behind everything. He's the vocal leader out of games. So I feel like that only does leave Prestini, who I know is in a new role. I think he's a really talented player, but in terms of if they were to make a change, I feel like unless he were to kind of turn things around, because there were some moments where I felt like and throughout the cast, it was like, Prestini's really performing. And I feel like on the other side, there were a lot of moments where I remember them hearing, wow, Prestini's off to a really slow start. He's just not there. And for him to kind of be more in that MaDaC's position, there's a lot of teams who are starting to, as of now, start to highlight those MaDaC's roles. And the thing right now with especially Hunter T, who taught a lot of teams, and this might change the meta up coming into the Pro League, is that quad AR setup. That quad in terms of 3 MaDaCs is 1 ICR. For E United, they're really good at SMGs. They have a really good ICR right now in Arcades, who could translate to a MaDaC if needed, but you really need another super stable MaDaC player. And I feel like as of right now, Pristini hasn't been Mr. Consistent. He hasn't been like right there because he's used to running like a super fast SMG. So I don't really blame him for not being able to translate. But I feel like out of the situation that they're in right now, who do you get rid of? I feel like the only option is Prestini at this moment. But whether or not they make a change, is obviously up to them. But I feel like if they were to, I feel like it has to be him. I don't think you could really logistically or reasonably get rid of anyone else.
Yeah, and I mean, one other thing before we move on here is, can you see them like Acides and Prestini actually parting ways different teams?
I think I think with franchising next year, it's just like there's a lot, and whether or not pros realize this or not, there's just so much that is on the line next season. I would be, in their situation. I know, obviously, being brothers, like you have that brotherhood. You want to be with your teammate. You want to be with him. I feel like it comes to a point where it's like, hey, it's just the team just doesn't work without you. Like work with you. It's just like the way that we have our roles set up, the way that we're working as a team. It's just like we have players who are in our position better, or we have the opportunity to get someone who's better. So I feel like if they had to, they would. And I feel like a lot of that would come off of the fact knowing that franchising is next year, knowing how much money's on the line, how important it is to get off to a hot start, and the ability to try to lock down contracts are really important as well for a lot of teams. I know there's a lot of rumors with drafts and all kinds of stuff as well, but being with like a stable organization with an actual contract is like super key. So if I were to be one of them and say, like, hey man, like, we got to let you go, it would be like, it has to happen. Like you don't really have a choice. So I feel like they would though. I feel like if they had to, they would. They obviously wouldn't do it easily, but I feel like if they had to, they would probably try to.
How much weight would you put into the new coach for Vicento? Do you think that's gonna help him?
I like Vicento a lot. I've liked Vicento. Probably I forget like the first time I remember saying his name, but it's been a while. I've always been a fan of his. I thought that he was a excellent professional player during his career, and I always thought like the main reason why I liked Vicento so much was his realness, like the way that. Like the reason why TR, Team Revenge back in AW, got to champs in the first place the whole thing they would talk about was Facento the leader, right? Facento is leading us, he's guiding us into these games, and for him to be as young as he was, he just has that like that leadership mentality. And so I feel like for a team like E United, getting a coach like that is going to be really important for them. I think a lot of teams are starting to realize, you know, and with Crowder going to Hunter T, other teams picking up coaches, it's like, hey, like a coach is actually super important, especially for 5 personalities, a lot of them being new during roster change periods and stuff like that. A coach is massively important. So I think Vicento honestly is like the perfect kind of player to translate to a coaching role. So I really do like him on the team a lot. I think he's going to provide a lot of great leadership. He's kind of been in the same situation. He's been in the COD Champs Grand Final, for God's sake. So he knows what it's like to be on the main stage and to be at the biggest and the brightest stage. So I think he's going to be an excellent fit. I think that was a huge and a really solid pickup for E United. So I'm excited to see what they can do. But I think Vicento is a kind of a diamond in the rough in terms of a coach, because I feel like throughout his entire playing career, he's always kind of been a player, but also a coach at the same time. So
right. So he kind of has that in-game leader kind of mentality.
Exactly, yeah.
So what were your opinions on Optic this event? They went 3-0 in the pools. They dropped 3 maps across their 3 matches. Then they got all the way to, was the winners finals? Yeah, winners finals.
Yeah.
And then they lost that control versus 100 Thieves. And I saw Krim even commented on it on, I believe it was on Reddit. He just said they completely just fell apart. Like Kenny flanked them, I think it was round 4 or 5 or whatever it was, and killed 2 of them in the back, and they just never regained after that. And so do you think that this roster, it can stay together and just maybe shift a little more roles around? Do you think they just got unlucky timing, or do you think maybe actual player change is needed?
I would say right now for OG, like I would kind of stay put for now. I think you got a really good group of players. You know, for the most part, I really do think like it was obviously a big improvement from last event to this one, so that is nice.
Right.
But I think the issue that they're running into is that there's, you know, the new guy in town, like Hunter T, are just like better at respawns than they are, at least at the last few events. And even E United is better at respawns than they are at this tournament. So, and for them to be 3-0'd by E United, and for Hunter T to not just 3-0 them in the league, but also to 3-1 them on LAN. Like, I mean, I know that obviously OG had beat them earlier on in the tournament, but still, like when it mattered the most, it was just like they just weren't there. And whether that was, you know, the lack of hard points, I think they went like 5-5 in a hard point or something like that. Just like not where I think that lineup should be at. I think a lot of teams have to realize, I think OG realizes this as well, like you can't be a search and destroy team anymore. Like you logistically, you cannot rely on search and destroy practice because it's not there. You're pretty much putting all your faith in a game mode that you're not working on in the first place anyway. And when it comes to LAN, like, you know, there's going to be a lot of different metas, how things work out. Everyone knows like pretty much every event is something new for the most part. So I feel like for them, they need to work on the respawns a lot more, kind of get those under wraps. I think they played pretty well in control throughout the weekend, so that was nice for them. But the worry that comes through is that 100T is also really good at control. They're also really good at hardpoint. So it's like you almost have to be better than them at respawns and then try to edge them out in the search and destroy. So I feel like for OG, they did make some improvements. I like the way the team looked, but my worry is that they didn't really compare. Like they had some really good close series, ones that they shouldn't have lost, moments that, you know, maybe you could argue should have gone their way, but they didn't. And it was very consistent in terms of who they lost to. I mean, it wasn't like they lost a game 5 round 11. It was just like a mental mistake or a moment where, you know, a player didn't check this point of view. So it wasn't as if it was like, you know, a super close ending that they just couldn't control. It was like, no, you guys just weren't prepared. You weren't ready for these games, however it may work, however you want to throw it out there. So it's a little bit worrying for OG. Like I thought that they were really going to come out and actually like kind of not dominate, but, you know, get to the grand final somewhat convincingly. And the fact that they didn't is kind of a step back moment, but I don't feel like it's time yet to make a change. And honestly, I don't even know where you start in terms of changes with that team. No, like anyone you throw out there's a huge argument as to why you shouldn't be doing that. So,
well, and like, I think at this point as well, like the difference between them and maybe 100 Thieves is the fact that obviously they do have 2 younger players who are definitely a little bit more inexperienced. And, you know, I know like TJ, for example, has been around for a long time. He has completed before we went into the, but, you know, he's been out of it for a couple of years as well, right? So Um, yeah, I just think that the experience on the team versus what 100 Thieves have, and then also I think that Krim and Scump, they're obviously fantastic players. Well, Karma as well. But I think the big difference with Karma compared to Krim and Scump, for example, is Karma tends to adapt pretty well. Meanwhile, Scump and Krim seem pretty set in their ways and kind of adapt a lot slower.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like
Yeah.
it was almost like this. Like the reason why they brought in the young players was that so that they could dominate and respawn, like Scum and Crimsix. And it's not really happening that way. It's like almost like TJ Halley's having some really good moments. Dashy's obviously like one of the best players in the entire world right now. So it's not really panning out the way that they would have intended. It's kind of like they have to kind of also midnight a search and destroy, which wasn't their original intention. So and it's kind of like an odd working of players. It's kind of hard to like solve the issue that they currently have, but I feel like they have the ability to. It's just a matter of certain things working out and whatnot. But it's kind of hard to like give analysis on that. Like, oh well, it'll work out, but that's kind of like what you have to say at this point because you really don't know what their future could look like. And if they were to maybe fine tune things a little more, maybe they don't lose a lot of these series in 3-0 fashions. Maybe they do go down to a game 5. So.
Yeah.
Okay, and so just moving on to Pool D for a little bit here as well. We kind of touched a little bit when we were talking about Facento and being in grand finals of champs. What do you think to Midnight?
Not really that surprised, to be honest. Like this group for me was somewhat clear cut. Like I wasn't really sure like how the Elevate guys would do exactly. I didn't really have a lot of expectations for Midnight. Never really have, especially with the new team that they had, what they do currently, exist with. I know they have like a close series versus E United and Losers, if I remember right. I think it went. Did it go to Game 5? Yeah, because I think it went to Game 5 with them. So that was like the only series where I was like, well, like maybe there's something here. But generally, like I thought it was going to be UIU and Heretics like every time. Like I wasn't really thinking otherwise. So that I was surprisingly nice to see Heretics like actually have like a really solid performance in pools. I know it maybe didn't go that same way versus everybody else, but in comparison to the teams that you could argue at times are kind of like bottom feeders of the pro league in terms of divisions, I thought they did perform well versus versus a lot of them. So
yeah, no, absolutely, and so I mean, coming out of pool play. Midnight 3-1 against Denial, and then took it to Game 5 against. So, I mean, if anything, they did better after pool play than they did in pool play. But and then going back to Heretics as well, I think that was something that they definitely needed. We kind of talked about it with Hunter actually, about how they didn't show up the best at the last LAN event. At Fort Worth, but I think it was nice and refreshing to see them, especially after the first stage Pro League, where coming out hot, there was division, I'm pretty sure, and then going into Fort Worth kind of popped. So going back into an event like this and seeing back on top, refreshing, and hopefully, I personally would love to see them stay up there.
Talking about completely flopping, can we talk about Splice for a second?
Splice is
absolutely one of my favorite teams to watch at the moment, or they were, I should say. And then they get 3-0'd by Gen G. They beat LG, which had a really bad tournament. They beat Denial, which is a team they should be beating. They go into pool play. They lose to Heretics. They lose to Envy. They won 2 maps across the 2 matches, and then they're done. They're a team that I would expect to be top 3 every single time, especially, they've shown that they can do it, but like, I don't know what went wrong. I'm just really disappointed with their placement, as I'm sure they are as well, to be honest.
It was like kind of consistent too. I mean, in terms of like the way that they lost, it was like, it wasn't as if, we got knocked out by Hunter T first round and then happened to lose to E United. It was like, no, you lost to Heretics and you lost to Envy, teams who, don't get me wrong, are good, but like not ones that you should be losing to. Like you were, like in my opinion, like they were a team who I was like, okay, they are 100% top 3 team coming into this event. They, despite the way that they perform in the pro league from time to time, they were pretty much the most consistent team up to this point. Outside of LG, I guess you could argue like 4th and 1st. But I mean, in terms of Splice, like they've been kind of right there, like in second and third, like that spot, has been kind of nice for them. So, yeah, I was pleasantly surprised as well. Like, pull plate, whatever. But when it came down to like a loss versus Heretics, I was like, what's happening here? So that was definitely one of my biggest surprises as well, kind of going on what you were saying. I really thought they were going to perform a lot better. Granted, I'll give them Pro League. We'll see how they play, and then we'll maybe kind of discuss whether or not a change should be made. But I think based on the way that they have played previously, I'll give them that pass for now. But yeah, it wouldn't surprise me though if changes could be in the process here soon. And there's been a lot of rumors in terms of like them talking about should a change be made. Yeah, with rosters and how that's all going to kind of pan out and stuff. But it wouldn't surprise me if they have a surprising loss in Pro League and they're like, "Yep, we're done," because this team is so like this. That was the biggest worry that I had with Splice, is that this team has such big personalities that I don't even think Facento and Crowder as coaches could even corral them. Like I legitimately think that they have such big personalities, it's so hard to deal with. And that's the reason why I've had such a hard time predicting them high, is that if they were to get knocked out by someone early and then go into losers and how they would kind of perform, it's like they've been kind of riding that momentum train of just winning these series that I feel like now that they've lost and that they're kind of reevaluating everything, they just weren't prepared. So it was rather unfortunate. But
do you think that that's maybe one of the problems with both LG and Spice? Is obviously they came out hot at Fort Worth for first and second. Do you think it's maybe just a little bit too much? They came off a bit and they kind of sat back a bit and hyped up, expected, as you just mentioned, that they were going to be those top three teams, and just not the way it turned out.
Yeah, I would say like for Splice, like I don't know if I would say like 100% complacency, because like I think if they would have won first, you could argue that, but I don't know. I wonder if it's just maybe feeling a little bit too confident, which I know I guess you could say is complacency. Like I'm trying to phrase them like different ways, but I don't know. It's just like Splice and LG are two teams to me that like chemistry wise just don't make sense. Like I don't like I see veteran leaders in terms of like Looney, for example, on Splice, but like in terms of LG, I just don't really get like that vibe. And I think they need the same thing that 100T got refreshed with. They brought in someone like Priesta, who is super easy to work with. You brought in Crowder, who could kind of corral the troops. A lot of big egos coming in from years prior who really want to all perform on this team. But I feel like for Splice, it's like they're kind of past that now. I think LG, they have a lot of big personalities as well. So it's like kind of the same thing to a point. But I think with LG, to be honest, like as much as I hate saying this, I think it's a matter of just not having the rampart. Like the way that they were dominating was because of Classic and Slacked stepping up. We didn't really see a whole lot from John. Like I know Formal was playing, pretty well, but he wasn't like up to the same standards that we would probably think that he would be. And Gunless was obviously just doing Gunless things, so that was something separate. But I really do. I think that the issue really a lot with this team is that they just don't have like that SOG pressure. Like John hasn't been the same John that we've seen in prior Treyarch titles. Like John in Black Ops 1, insane. Black Ops 2, fantastic. Black Ops 3, probably best player in the game. Black Ops 4, probably not even a top 10 SMG, like not even a top 10 SOG, which for me, like coming onto this team, it was Formal, it was Gunless, it was John, and the fact that John isn't there is a little bit worrying from time to time. And I know it's a SOG, but still, like a lot of teams are seeing success with SOG players, so I don't know how to make that argument. Absolutely. But I think that their biggest problem in terms of weapons, like we're relating back to that, was just not having the Rampart, which is unfortunate, but I think that really is the case for LG. So
for sure. Awesome. And so then before moving on to Steve's here, I just want to touch a little bit on UIU as well. Obviously, finishing second in the pools, pretty new roster as well, picking up royalty, and then the bracket play not coming out too. What were your thoughts on that roster? Did you expect a little better from that? And what do you expect?
I would say like I would expect them to beat some of the teams that they were in the pools with. Like I know that they obviously come out and finish second, but I think that they lost to Midnight. I want to say then they probably lost to Heretic. So like those losses for me shouldn't be happening if they realistically want to be involved. Maybe even the top 8. Like I know they've been in the top 12 kind of more. So if they want to kind of move on to the next, kind of array of teams. I think they do need maybe a change up at this point, depending, just because you have back-to-back placements. From what I heard when I got to talk with a few of the UYU guys, they were really happy with Royalty's performance. I thought he was a really good addition to this team. It's just a matter of kind of trying to find the pieces around him. But what my favorite thing about UYU is the AR setup that they have. Like they're perfectly in place to do a lot of the things that some of the top teams are. It's just a matter of getting those all to work together. Maybe even that's when you talk about coaching staff and all those things start to maybe come into play a little bit more, for that group. But I think you have a really good Parzelian. You have a Mayhem, who I think is pretty good as well. Methods, I haven't really got to see too much of him recently, but I think he was a really good player last year. Probably still has a lot of that skill too. So I think they're a really good lineup in terms of like their ARs, which is what you really want to have right now in Black Ops 4. So I feel like they have a good blueprint. They have a really good step moving forward. It's just a matter of executing it and putting around the pieces that can kind of complement them. So.
Yeah,
for sure.
Exactly. Then moving on to 100 Thieves. I mean, I feel like you said a couple times, really, they're kind of changing the meta, really.
Yeah.
The 4 AR setup, and I mean, it kind of showed in their map count. They lost 1 series in pools. That was to Optic. They lost 2 maps. Let me see, 2 maps, 3 maps. 4 maps in bracket play, and I mean, it just kind of shows that they're just clicking. I think undeniably the best team going into it, and I think Fort Worth was so like it was theirs. It was like in their hand, and it just like slipped through when Priester got sick. It was so disappointing to see that, and I think that might have been the only chance we had of seeing a team kind of repeat being a repeat winner in this game, because so far 3 different tournaments, 3 different winners, and I think that trend is going to continue. But what are your general opinions on 100 Thieves?
Oh man, I like this team a lot. I really do. Like whenever the core that was kind of announced at the beginning of the title was there, I was like, okay, I like these guys a lot. They're investing a lot in this particular group of players who, much like how the original Optic team formed, like it wasn't easy for these group of really talented players to all come together, but they made it work eventually. Like it wasn't going to be easy. So I feel like once they kind of got through that stage of just not, and the thing that and I even mentioned this in a video that I uploaded today, but it was like all of these guys in terms of talk about Kenny, Slasher, and Octane, which were pretty much the highlighted 3 coming into this roster originally, was that they were all really talented and they have a lot of ego with that. Like that just happens, right? Like whenever you have some accomplishments, it just happens. Like whenever you're on a team of this caliber, Kenny, who was an MVP, Rookie of the Year, multiple-time champion last year, Slasher, without question, one of the best ARs last year, Octane as well, super solid year, won Birmingham. I mean, Slasher even won a ton of, a few events as well. But at the same time, they all had a chip on their shoulder. So it was like Octane joined OG. Obviously, the Dynasty pretty much, he was a replacement, total failure, top 24 at champs. Slasher top 16 at champs, which that was a team who was super favored to probably win the entire thing. And his arch nemesis Aches likes to gloat about it on Twitter. He ends up winning it all. And then Kenny lost the COD Champs Grand Final versus a team that he could have beat, and that would have probably been one of the best years that any pro player would have ever had. And his rookie year, winning multiple events, being the MVP, being the Rookie of the Year, and winning a ring at the same time would have really cemented it. So I feel like a lot of these guys, they had a lot of ego. They had they had to get that checked. And I think that was really added with Priesta and Crowder being brought to the team. Priesta, low maintenance, can run anything. Enable, or excuse me, not Enable, but Crowder joining the team as the coach, I think was the perfect voice, because I think a lot of teams don't really realize this. Like whenever you have a team, it's really without a coach, it's super hard, especially if you recently formed, to take constructive criticism by people who are also at the same time kind of your competition. Like whenever you join it, like in these groups, like Octane and Slasher, ARs, best ARs the last 5 years, probably the last 4 or 5 titles. I mean, like, great, we're on the same team, but by the way, I'm better than you. Like, it's probably that's the mentality that you have to have. Like the reason why they've gotten to that point is because they feel like they're better than every other AR in the game. And so when you're together and you're taking constructive criticism from each other, it's like, this guy has no right to tell me what to do. Like, I'm way better than him. Like, I won a title last year. Slasher, I've won a ring before. Octane, I don't think that you got even close. Like, he's had that mentality. And so I feel like having someone like Crowder from an outside point of view who's not going to play favorites was crucial. Adding someone like Priesta, who's low maintenance, not going to argue. Like, you're not adding an extra, big piece in there. Our big personality was really nice as well. And I think the scariest thing about 100T as of this moment is that I honestly think that they can be better than this last tournament. I think they can improve at search and destroy. I think their respawns can stay consistent. I think they have a really good group of minds, and they also for future role changes that could come about. I know that they kind of rock the quad AR that I was talking about, and that JP from COD Stats is bringing up as well. They can translate. It's like Slasher has used a main AR in his past. Octane, and especially Black Ops 3, whenever the Ban and Protect was out, he used every AR in the game and made it work. Like the Man of War, I think it was the ICR was in that game as well. And then the regular weapons. I mean, he was using everything. Priest, that most versatile player of last year, probably one of the best flex players, also happens to be has run every single gun in this game. Kenny has used the SOG. He's run the MaDaC. So I feel like for all of these guys, the scariest thing is that they can adapt. They can kind of mend into different things, and they also are only getting better as time goes on. So to kind of put it lightly, sure. I'm a big fan of Hunter T right now. And much like yourself, I also own a Hunter T jersey that happens to be in my closet. So
I think I need to get on the bandwagon, I guess.
Okay, there you go. Yeah, it's the same one that I got. I wish it was signed by players, though. That'd be pretty cool.
True.
Very nice. That would be very nice. All right, so bear with me on this. There is a question coming. So we go from 100 Thieves. We got Drake and the other person I can't remember who invested recently. They got a lot. They got a lot of money kind of floating around with various things they've got going on. We see franchising coming. Did you see the leaks that kind of happened this past week? I've
been catching them. There's been like so many. I thought there's one every day. I'm not sure if I'm like fully up to date, but
yeah, I actually just subscribed to notifications on Reddit of the COD burner subreddit. Right. But yeah, it's kind of crazy. I did you ever hear about the thing with Barbara Streisand's house? This was a thing. Like, it's crazy. For anybody that doesn't know, basically, some paparazzi took pictures of her house and put it online. She sued them to get the pictures taken down, which then brought more attention to it, which then made everybody know what her house looked like and where it is. Right. Which I think similar to what Activision has done. They took down these posts, and now everybody is jumping on them. Everybody wants to know what's going on. Whereas if they just left it, it would have been, this is bullshit. Like, nobody, this is just another stupid rumor. There's no way this is true. But now everybody's.
It's kind of similar to the whole 5v5 speculation, right? Like how that came out pretty early on, and then even organizations were still like, is it gonna happen? Yeah, it's for sure. The way they handled it was probably not the best.
Yeah. So, what if the CWL franchise league ends up looking like the Overwatch league in the terms of there's no brands per se? It's not Optic. It's not. I don't know. I can't think of another thing. Like, it's not Gen G. It's Houston Outlaws. It's Soul Dynasty. Things like that. Do you think that this is the right way to go? I say the right way, but do you think that's the best thing they could be doing, or do you think what the rumors are will work out better in the long run?
See, like for me, this is just a personal opinion. I have, I'm just following along with everybody else in terms of like hearing leaks and stuff like that. I really do think, and as soon as I heard anything with the Overwatch League, I immediately thought this, and so I'm kind of glad that my prediction is still alive. I thought that they were going to change the team names. I didn't think we were going to see Optic. I didn't think we were going to see Envy. I thought it would have been a good idea originally. And I didn't think that we were going to see, the Dallas Fuel or the Houston Outlaws, just to use, those two as an example either. I thought that they were going to try to follow this same kind of franchise model, the way that other sports work in terms of like having multiple brands for different games. So it's like, you have the Dallas this, you have the Dallas that, et cetera, different team names, more branding, more money opportunities. And I feel like that's kind of the goal. I think a lot of people want to see, the Dallas Fuel back, or they want to see, whatever it may be. And I feel like what Activision Blizzard is doing may not seem, from an esports point of view, normal. It may not seem like it makes sense, but from a money standpoint, it does make sense in terms of like how they are, like how these organizations are going to make money and how the league is going to make money, which is pretty much not like what everyone should be excited about, but like as a COD viewer, you don't have to always be worried about viewership. Like as long as the game is making money, as long as viewership isn't always there, but in terms of like the viewerships are interactive, they're making money off of that viewership, which is different than actual viewership. I think that's kind of a win. So originally I wasn't like a huge fan of like the leaks that were suggesting these things, but I always kind of thought it was going to be that way. I don't think that, teams like Optic Gaming or Team Envy will, continue in COD, unfortunately. But at the same time, it could be good because I think that Call of Duty has a huge opportunity when it comes to franchising in terms of, its easiness to understand, its ability for, someone. I've always kind of used this example. If dad was to walk in the living room, is he gonna change the channel if he sees Call of Duty on? Well, what's gonna make him stay? Familiarity. Well, what's gonna bring him in familiarity? Well, he's gonna understand the terms. It's not super hard to understand. Like if I don't even understand League of Legends. Like as an esports like personality or however you want to label it. Like I've been watching League of Legends for a long time. I went to an event recently that happened in St. Louis. No clue what's happening whatsoever. I think I need to like take a college course in terms of learn like what all of these things mean. So I feel like like some esports are very hard to like understand. Like you almost have to like learn super in depth. Call of Duty, which has been plagued on its ability to be so easy and how it's a simple esport. Well, in franchising, it's not a bad idea. Like basketball, football, not really that difficult to learn. So I feel like with Call of Duty's point of view, I think it has a really big chance. And so I think I'm willing to kind of take those sacrifices of losing brand names like this, at least in my opinion, and put those to the side and say, you know what? Like, I kind of get what they're trying to do. I think that Call of Duty has like its next, the way that it can kind of be brought to the next step. If and that's what everyone wants, like everyone wants to see Call of Duty succeed. That next step requires these team changes, these team change, or rather the organization name change-ups in order for a new fan base to also get brought in and to want to invest in the same thing that we all have, previously. So I'm not the biggest fan, but at the same time, it's kind of nice to get a little bit of a refresher. Don't get me wrong. I'm not looking forward to calling, Optic and or Envy something else than their original names, but I think it's something that's necessary, even though it's not the easiest. So,
I mean, like you said, there's obviously a lot of pros to it, and I think for a lot of teams it wouldn't even be that big of a deal. But I think to people like Optic and 100 Thieves, for example, probably even FaZe, who obviously have really not just established themselves in the esports world, but like they've really branched out and made like Optic Gaming is just a name that a lot of people know about now. Even people that I talk to about esports who I'm trying to I get super passionate, they have no idea about, but then I might mention Optic and then they know at least about that name, right? And obviously 100 Thieves, who have been going down the whole streetwear and everything else, again really putting out, and I think people like Need and X, and I'm sure Astro is very passionate about Team Envy and it being the name of what they have, but I think people like making Optic and Thieves established name, not just esports team, it's going to hurt them more than anything.
And I think too, like with organizations especially that aren't already in the Overwatch League, like Optic, for example, they already kind of have like a split brand. But like FaZe and 100T, they're not in any other, I mean, outside of, I'll say this, FaZe is not in any other franchise league. 100T is technically obviously in League of Legends, so they haven't had like that brand change up, but these organizations that aren't involved with Overwatch, I think like you were mentioning, it's going to be big for them because they haven't had that happen yet. They haven't had to change up their brand. Like 100T is fresh, right? I mean, it literally was by definition established in Black Ops 3, but more recently, it's like the last year and a half, really, it's like been more in the spotlight. So I totally agree. I think it's going to be difficult for them to adjust. There's been a lot of rumors saying that they aren't interested, which don't know if I agree with that, but in terms of most things, I think it is going to be a necessary evil for them to kind of make it to the next stages. But it's unfortunate, right? The brand recognition that these organizations have worked on for so long, at the same time, kind of has to be put to the side, and you have to hope that the fans that you worked on trying to acquire for, in some of these organizations' cases, like decades, carries over and is willing to follow you in that next journey, that next path, essentially. So,
I think
absolutely.
If you look at the franchise, the really established franchise leagues, you have the Overwatch and you have the LCS. Like one has branding, the other one has like a separate branding. So there is no correct formula if you
Right.
will. Like there's no right way to do it. This is still like unknown territory that we're stepping into, and both the Overwatch League and the LCS have seen success in their own ways. So it's gonna be a really interesting year next year. Just seeing the way everything unfolds, especially things like a draft, which has been rumored. I really don't like the idea of that personally, but we'll kind of see where that goes. What are your opinions on the draft in general?
Not a fan. Not a fan at all. I don't want to even try to get in that territory. Like a draft in terms of like the fantasy draft, like, putting everyone in free agency. And it's like, okay, first pick, like whoever, I'm not a fan of that whatsoever. I think, this isn't a difficult stage for anybody. Like I know, like we're all trying to get to franchising, and it's a scary territory for a lot of teams. It's a lot of scary territory for people who are investing their money, because the thing is that we don't know what it's like to see a franchise esport go down. Like we've only seen it go up, so it's like we don't know what that downside looks like. How that return on money. Is Overwatch gonna last 6 more years? Like, are they gonna get that full investment? Like, we don't know. We hopefully aren't going to find out, but probably will eventually with some games. So, I feel like the step that a lot of these organizations are taking to get into franchising, it's like you can't just be like, okay, yeah. So all the work that you guys have been putting in, like Scum of Crimsix, I realize you guys have been in this organization since a long time. Doesn't matter anymore. I don't think that's going to work. And also, for a lot of organizations that don't make it in, they might want to sell their players. Like maybe they hold off, wait till the draft ends, and then they sell their players, because they're not going to make any money off being like, oh yeah, you guys are released, no problem. Like, so I think there's going to be a lot of contract problems that are going to be the case that could be involved. Like I said, like for example, and I've always been kind of worried about this, like E United, for example, really talented team. They're not involved in any other. I feel like everyone's been talking about FaZe and Hunter T and OG, but like one team that's just kind of off to the side there is E United, also not involved in any other franchise esports. I know that as of this moment, they don't have as much money in terms of like a TSM or a Cloud9 or a OG and Envy, et cetera, have. So if that team, for example, wanted to make a payday, let's hold on to Simp. Let's make sure he doesn't go in the first round and we lose money. Let's hold on to his contract and then sell him afterwards. So it's like, I don't know if the draft would necessarily work. I'm worried about contracts, and I'm worried about the organizations who have worked for all of this time to be brought back to that stage 1 period, because I just don't think that that's fair. I get their point of view, and I understand when it kind of came through with the Overwatch League. I get it when it came down to the NBA 2K League, because there wasn't really a whole lot there. Like I attended one of the Overwatch League tournaments that was in Las Vegas. That was alongside a Call of Duty tournament. There was a little bit of a scene, so I kind of get it from their point of view. But this is a decade. Like this is a decade of esports, of competition, of players going to different organizations and signing and doing all of these things. So, and with the future of what franchising wants to accomplish, which is to have these locations like where you have home games and away games. I don't think Crimsix wants to move to France and start all over again and be with a whole new staff and player base that has no idea what they're doing for the first few years. I think he would retire before that. I think a lot of players would retire before they would even want to be in the mix of possibly joining other orgs. So just like all those worries and all those things that kind of get thrown around just totally turned me off to the draft. I think the draft would be a super awesome idea. I think it sounds great and like your thought process, but in actuality, I just don't think it has a place, especially for an esport that's existed this long.
What about this? So, this is something that again, anytime that we've spoken about franchising, brought up pretty often. What about so similar to League of Legends, have an amateur academy team? Sorry. What if the academy team, that would work?
So like draft in terms of like just players like drafted solely to the development or whatever, your academy teams, that what you're saying? Or
so I mean, I guess so. If Optic sign, they know that it's going to be franchising, we know how it works. Now we bring in whichever 5 players say it's the same now, and then every other team does the same thing, or 6 players, I guess. Every other team does the same, but then we also have our academy league that's good as well, where similar to kind of like League of Legends, where you have to have an academy, and they're going to be playing weekend and week. That way, Russell.
Right. Okay, I see what you mean.
So then, each organization has the academy team from.
Right. Yeah, so
All
I
those
think
things,
in that example, it would make sense. Like I think like how the NBA or the NFL works, or even the MLB, which I know they draft even sometimes from minor leagues, but primarily speaking like college term, like collegiate level. Even in this instance would be semi-professionals. I think that would make sense. I would like that a lot. That's one thing that I think we have to be careful sometimes with the term draft because draft can mean a lot of different things. In that case, I would love a draft, but in terms of like the fantasy draft thing, it just wouldn't. But I think that would be great. That'd be something that I'd be be a really big fan of. And for someone who has cast over the amateur scene, and especially last year, I got a really big chance to cast over like 30 or 40 different AM tournaments for guys like Brack and Simp and all these guys who are now kind of making the come up this year. I know that there's a lot of talent out there that's just as good as they are. Like there was a lot of players who I know who are starting to kind of get involved, in some organizations, starting to even go to some LAN tournaments, who were competing against them and playing just as well as they were. So I think that would also provide some stability for the AM circuit. Like the one thing the AM circuit wants to work toward is for players to actually get on a real organization. So it's like if you have, this very amateur circuit type level, what's one thing they can look forward to besides some cash, which isn't always guaranteed? Well, you have the opportunity to possibly get drafted and then go on an organization and get a salary. So I love that idea. I think that would be that I'd be super a part of. I would love to even, watch those things, even cast. I think that'd be lovely. But I think that'd be something that we need. And also it's nice because it provides a factor for players to keep playing and to give them incentive, even if they're not in the pro league, to actually do something, because it's one thing that's really hindered Call of Duty for the past few years. It's like, if you're not in pro league, well, nothing else to do. Like, just play in online tournaments. That's really all you have to do. And so I feel like with that, it would help.
And also it drives players. So, I mean, like look at Parasite for midnight. Because he didn't make the league, but for a lot of players, that's basically it, right? Like the year is over for them, unless you get lucky and you do manage to find yourself on. But pretty disheartening. Right? So having that kind of second, having something. So would you say that having somewhat of a similar setup to CS, where we have obviously, and then we.
I think so. Yeah, I think that would be something that I would be a huge fan of. And I think, especially with Call of Duty, which is kind of unique in this instance, having, I forget the exact percentage, but it was like 30 something percent of rookie players entering into the CWL who've never played in the CWL, or rather Pro League before. Like clearly there's something there. Like clearly we're having, some players who are making strides at the entire Midnight roster. Like, for example, like never played any of them except for Llama God, who I think played in like the first ever, regardless, like pretty much the entire team has never played in the CWL ever before. And so I think with that being the case, and even internationally wise, I think that would be a great opportunity. That'd be something that I would love to see, because I think the amateur scene has a lot there's a lot of aspiring players who could, like you said, start to kind of make something out of it. So I'd be a huge fan of that draft system. I'd be a huge fan of the, like you mentioned, like League of Legends and Overwatch has contenders and all those things. I think that would work out really well.
Yeah.
So the rumor that I read though is very different to what we were just talking about. The rumor that I read is that each team will run an individual tournament every, I don't remember the exact period of time, but let's say every 2 months or so. It can be either online or online, and then each individual team has to fund the winner of that tournament to get to the next CWL event. Which take it with a pinch of salt, because it is a leak, it's a rumor at this point, but it's a very weird way of doing it.
Yes. Very strange.
There wouldn't be.
I don't even think I quite understand, but yeah.
I think that's
development league.
Yeah, I think that's like Activision, maybe them trying to like get these organizations involved with their local community. I think that's like the aim for it.
I 100%.
I wonder if is it regional based? Like, is it like you have to live in Texas, for example, to qualify for Dallas's spot? That'd be my next question. It's like, depending on the weekend, like, if I were a player, the way that this will work is like, hey, let's go to the easiest one. Like, let's go to the some super really small, one of these franchise events that we know a whole lot of teams aren't willing to travel to. and just dominate that one and just win it. So I don't know.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I hope that's not like they're playing and that's it. I hope that's just something extra, maybe to go on top with it, rather than like they're playing for semi pros, but or amateurs, whatever you really want to call them. But that's interesting.
Right.
Let me read you this a second. It says each CDL team, that might be a typo, it might mean CWL, will host city circuit events in their local markets. The league may provide the opportunity for winners of these events to compete on behalf of the team's HMA, I'm not sure what that means, as part of the league-wide city circuit at a league tentpole event. So I took that as like meaning the tentpole event, meaning like the next CWL event. So there'll be like an amateur or a B bracket, I guess. I did just post the link in the Twitch chat to the post.
Yeah, I'm just reading it here. Yeah, and well, so it is saying citywide as well, right? So
yeah, but then you have to think.
It's certainly interesting.
You have to think that it couldn't be it couldn't be statewide, because if there's a Texas, there's a Dallas, excuse me, and a Houston, then how would that work?
That's true, right? Like I wonder. Yeah, it's a lot of questions.
So many questions
to go along with. Yeah.
I think that's another one that's it's one of those things that is probably going to go down for a while, and things are going to build off of it.
Right. I mean, it is all speculation, but
absolutely.
It is very interesting to see. It'd be such a weird way of doing it. Sorry, carry on.
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, so I was just about to ask. So, how big of a fan are you, Lando, of these open events that we've been?
Like in terms of like separating like open bracket compared to like
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I get it. It's like I don't know. I'm kind of indifferent about it because to me it's like I don't know, like there's a side of me that's like I kind of like the ability for amateur teams to have a chance because we have sometimes seen amateur teams like kind of perform and really kind of light things up. And then there's the other side of me where it's like, you know what, it's just kind of nice just to have the top 16 teams kind of be consistent. You get pool play done in one day. From like a scheduling point of view, like MLG, this is probably like amazing for them. Like coming from someone who has like helped run events and like help schedule things, sometimes it's like that can be such a nightmare. And for that to kind of be all taken care of is like the nicest thing in the world. So I kind of indifferent about it. Like I kind of wish that the open bracket was still kind of involved to kind of get that grassroots type feel to give each amateur team that goes to the tournament the chance to be in pool play. But at the same time, I know that the strain that it kind of puts on scheduling and the difference. And I think it's nice to award amateur players. I just think that the biggest issue that Call of Duty's kind of run into this year is that they're pretty much trying to be a franchise system without it being franchising. So a lot of these amateur players, like Simp, for example, FC Black, I mean, that's a team that's talented enough to probably get into pools. I mean, if you talk about open bracket stuff, so I don't know.
Yeah,
it's I'm kind of indifferent about it. I wish both perspectives could be accomplished, but I do get the point of view. I just think that what they try to do this year with separating the open bracket into a separate tournament is something they tried to accomplish in the past. Even with like UMG South Carolina, they tried to do the exact same thing when ESL was kind of in charge and whatnot. So. I don't know. It's odd, but I get it. I understand it.
When we, I believe this was when we were talking to Hunter as well. I had an idea of so basically for when have you, we keep the pro league obviously separate as it is already, but then when it comes to these open brackets, academy is so similar to how it's been in previous years where, like you just mentioned, open bracket plays through and then top tier teams then move into playing against. So what would you think to having similar to that? We have an open bracket, but instead of playing into obviously pro league teams, they play into these academy teams and I have like relegation.
So it's just saying like basically like these open events would almost be academy teams that can make it into pools.
So no. So the academy team is basically replacing what in previous years has been the pro teams.
Oh, okay.
So they have their own tournament. They're playing the pools straight up that. But then the open bracket, the top tier teams that make it through on a certain point, the top 4 teams, I guess it would move then into pool play of with the academy team.
Oh,
That
okay,
way,
I see.
even these smaller teams getting a chance to play against these at least bigger names at some point, bigger teams that obviously established some kind of ties to.
So the only thing that I could counter that with would be, let's say Envy is in. Can their academy team also be like? Could they play against each other in this instance?
No, so the CWL bracket would be completely separate from the AM
Yeah.
/
I apologize. Okay, yeah, okay. I have
B team.
started to follow. Okay, I see. Yeah.
So
Okay.
the completely open bracket would lead into the pools, which would have the B teams in, but the pools that the A teams were in would be completely separate.
Oh, okay. Right. I see what you mean. So like open bracket can be in okay, I see. Yeah, that'd be interesting. I don't know. I think that would be something to venture into. I apologize for not understanding. I was like trying to follow it, and I was like, I get distracted easily. So, but yeah,
the first time you explained it to me, I had no idea what he was talking about.
Well, that's interesting.
Yeah,
so, like the open bracket feeds
into
the academy teams. Okay, and then,
exactly.
Okay, I gotcha. Yeah, it's interesting. I don't know. I think that'd be something interesting to kind of figure out. My only worry would be like from Activision's point of view, would they get viewership in order to justify that being something? Because which they might. I don't know for from their point of view, but in actuality, like from a competitive standpoint, I think that would be awesome. From like a business standpoint, I don't know if they would be down with it, but
Yeah, and that was the only thing for sure. Like I think something, and that's why I was saying like I think it would have been better, obviously, in these years, especially when we had being in serum, we can do things more the way to, because that way we could have, especially in these past couple of years, everything has just been well. Obviously, we did just open up to event, but obviously, the likes of like MG and G, all of these guys have been kind of shut out as well, right? And so it would have been a lot nice to kind of be like, okay, well, seeing as we can't give you guys the CWL Pro League events, have these events where we're still going to have top players and the amateur.
Right.
Again, all speculation.
Right.
So,
I think that's a good idea, though. I'd find it interesting.
Yeah.
I'd watch it.
Right.
Which doesn't really mean a whole lot, but at least you have one guaranteed viewer, so there's that.
That's true. That's very true.
For sure.
So one of the last things that was mentioned in the leaks that we got this past week was the moving to PC. Something that I personally much prefer PC gaming than console. Just I'm the
same way.
Yeah. Just the graphics, it's so uncapped, but I also prefer a controller than a keyboard and mouse. So I would be very curious to see, would a bunch of the players just be like, "No, screw this, I'm just going to retire," or would they try and transition into playing PC but using a controller, which was actually one of the things that I read is a possibility, supposedly. So what are your thoughts on that in general? How do you think the general player base would react?
To be honest, I don't know how they would react at first. I think either I think it would be one of two ways. Either they would totally not be down for that and then have to get used to it anyway, or they would actually be really interested in it, and then maybe it doesn't turn out the way that it's supposed to be. From Activision's point of view, this is primarily a console game, and it's not like pretty much like consoles preferred first over PC. So in terms of like patches, the way that League plays kind of brought up, like I played PC Black Ops 4, and there's just no one on it anymore. Like it's just not there. So my worry would be like, because they want the experience of the fan who watches these to be the same as the way the players are kind of experiencing these things. Same with the Overwatch League works and how that kind of all comes into play. So I would say if Activision's plan is in the future to want to have a much more PC audience, which probably is not a bad idea, considering the way that consoles are kind of falling behind more and more each year, and obviously have the ability to upgrade parts anytime you want to for PCs. I mean, there are computers like my computer's probably 3 years old and it can barely handle streaming and playing Fortnite at the same time. So obviously there's like upgrades that you can make. So I don't know. I feel like from Activision standpoint, if they want to try to push PC in the future, I get that. But at the same time, trying to sell to an audience which has primarily been on console in the past, are they trying to change their market? Are they trying to keep it the same? I think that would really kind of weigh in a lot in terms of whether or not they would make this change. But from the point of view of like getting consistent frame rate, getting things that aren't as crazy in terms of lag, like on certain consoles, because that's absolutely a thing. Like that happens. Like I know players are like, oh, this side of the stage. Like as much as that is unfortunately, sometimes that does happen. I'm not saying it did happen at not Gfinity, but it happened at CWL London. But that is the case. Like, just consoles aren't perfect. They're all like, they're not the same, kind of systems. They're not as reliable as PCs are. So I wouldn't be super opposed to it. I'd be interested in checking it out. But from Activision's point of view, and I think I've heard those leaks in the past as well, I think that they would have to handle that very carefully. But I know that other console esports, I think the 2K League might even play on PCs, or do they?
Right.
They might not. I remember hearing that they were thinking about it. I'm not sure if they actually do, but it makes sense. I get that.
Right. Do you think that maybe if that is something they want to do, they maybe need to do something to offer in terms of either cross-platform or even, as Sam, having some adaptability to being able to plug your controller in and it's the same.
I think that would be the next step for sure. I think, with what Fortnite's done, as much as people want to try to critique it and say, oh, it's this or it's that, it's, whatever. I think they've done some, incredible things in terms of, having that cross-platform ability, and stuff. So I think that would be naturally the next step. I think that would be a really nice transition that they could do if they really wanted to have players, from a competitive standpoint, play on PC but with a controller. I think that would be the next step. I think the one thing that holds a lot of people back, the one thing that's kind of held me back, at least in my prior history, was the reason why I've always played on PlayStation. Like I tried playing on Xbox, just didn't work. The reason why I started on PlayStation was that's where my friends were. It's where we were kind of all playing together. And so I think that'd be interesting though. I would find that to be something to look at in the future. But my only worry is that if they were to host future online LAN events, are you also allowed to use, can you have someone who's on PC versus console? We all know who's going to win that fight. It's probably going to be the PC player. Right. So in terms of like hosting on our major online, or I keep saying online, major LAN events in the future are open. That's the word I was looking for. That's a lot of PCs. That's a lot of setups that you have to have. And that's a lot of money that's also going to be coming through from that. Activision has a lot of money. They could probably afford it, but would it, logistically make sense? I think that'd be the perfect world scenario, but in actuality, I don't know how you can say, for example, you can play on Xbox, you can play on PS4, and then also we talked about Call of Duty has the rights with PlayStation. Are they willing to mend that too? So
there's a lot of unknowns.
There's a lot of hurdles, for sure. Yeah. But I wouldn't be opposed to it, and I don't think the players would be either if it worked out in their favor to get something that's more consistent, something that's more competitive. So
for sure. I think that's kind of what it boils down to, just the competitive advantage kind of being taken away. There's no the Ethernet. I remember hearing a thing about the color of the Ethernet cable decides who's going to win. Like that's so ridiculous. Like 2019, like that should not be the case.
Consoles are weird, man. I tell you what, they're interesting machines.
They are very weird. So I have one more question of the questions that we've kind of planned out, and then we've got a couple of questions that have come up in chat and then from Reddit. So my question of the CWL teams, who is your top 3 teams right now? And what is your very early prediction of who is going to win CWL Anaheim? Wait, is Anaheim the next one?
I believe so, yeah.
I'm going to double check that, but go ahead.
It is.
This is difficult. So I would 100% say 100 T's up there. Like there, I think that's kind of a given in terms of like top 3. I really want to see Genji play a little bit more because I feel like they had a good run. I'm not sure if they're going to be like super consistent. But I think the OG has to be up there. So those like guaranteed top 2. I think the third one could be argued. I think United could have an opportunity for that spot. I think I want to see how LG comes back. I don't know if they're always going to be up there either. I want to see how Splice tries to make their comeback as well. But I would say 100% 100T, 100% OG. And I think I might have to give United the swing.
Yeah.
At least in terms of those predictions, which I know are like the top 3 at CWL London, whatever.
Yeah.
But I'm interested though, after the roster change periods, after every roster starts to kind of solidify over time, I think that could easily change. But the only consistent one for me is 100T, and my early prediction for Anaheim is going to be 100T again, just because I like them a lot. Even if they would have come in, for example, second, they would still be one of my favorites to win Anaheim, just based off the progression of that team, the way that everything works, and how pliable that they are as a group. So, yeah, I would say those are my top 3. Like I said, they could be changed. Like, I think Gingy has the capability to be up there. I think, a few other rosters who kind of underperformed this past weekend could be up there over time as well. But that's kind of where I'm at the moment.
My top 3 has 6 teams in it, which
I get that. Yeah, I'm the same way.
Like,
I was like checking them off the list over time. I was like, I can't put them there, but I can.
Yeah. No, exactly. It just it's who turns up on the day.
Yeah,
it really is. And you mentioned Gen G. We didn't really touch on them too much when we were talking about the London recap, but they are, I think, maybe one roster move or one kind of role shift away from being like winning a tournament. I really do.
Yeah. I think they're a really solid group, and I think I want to say they took 100T to a game 5.
Yeah,
which I think that was like, obviously, right. Yeah. And I think OG beat 100T earlier on in the tournament, which was like, the closest series essentially in that case. But, I think that they're a really talented group. I think they have a lot of really good communication. They're a good search and destroy team, which isn't my favorite. I know they've kind of relied more on respawns recently with the recent changes, but Envoy is a very talented player. I think Mox, without question, should be involved in the top 5 AR discussion because of how well he's been playing. So they got a good group. I agree. I think that they probably are one roster change away from being much like how United kind of is in that same conversation,
right?
From being an actual contender. I think they're a good team, and obviously they send a lot of teams to a very close matchups, or have some really close matchups. But I think in the longevity of things, I'm taking an OG or I'm taking an E United, I'm taking a 100T in terms of respawns more times than not versus a group like that. So
no, I 100% agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think obviously a lot of valid points, and I definitely think that they've got a good future ahead of them throughout the rest of the year. So moving on, as Sam mentioned, we do have some questions from chat, Twitter as well. So I'm going to start off with the questions that we got here from Reddit. So the first one comes from Garden, Splice, and why this is points, or are people overreacting to?
It's a good question. That's a really solid question to ask. So to say that, do they need to change right now? I would say no. I would evaluate Pro League and kind of go from there. In terms of overreacting, I think in especially Splice's case, I think it's fair to kind of go a little bit crazy right now. Like you go from second, you go from third, like those kind of placements to, just getting demolished by teams that you absolutely shouldn't. In LG's case, they didn't look that great either. Like I think they went to game 5 versus Elevate, the start of the losers bracket. And I was just like, okay, where's this team's head at? So, and the way that the Pro League is working, and honestly with franchising next year, it's just like you want to have such a core group of players. If you really think you have a solid opportunity at franchising next year, making sure that your 5-man lineup is prepared for the longevity of a title next year is super important. So I think if there were a time to kind of freak out about roster changes and wanted to make sure that you are super prepared, not even for champs, but for next year more primarily, which we've never had that happen before. It's like, all right, who's ready for champs? It's like, who's ready for franchising, which is after champs, which is going to actually be what the future of the game is super crucial. So I think overreacting to roster changes, not really. And to be honest, like LG's case, there's an actual prime example of something that maybe could be an issue with them. And for Splice at the same time, from top team to just not there, is kind of worrying as well. So is it the time to make a roster change as of this moment? Obviously you can't, no, but evaluate Pro League. If you don't see any dramatic improvements, I think you do make a change.
For sure. Yeah, and I think the one good thing to know, at least, is they don't play in these upcoming weeks, so they do.
Okay, yeah.
And then one thing to note about LG as well, you mentioned about they actually went game 5 in every game. Bracket.
Oh, did they? Oh, wow.
Yeah, game 5 against 8, game 5 against A's, and
Like it's scary to think that first a team like Elevate, they were one game away from placing dead last. So
yeah, right. Yeah, exactly.
I thought they're a hard team to predict. Like I know Envy's kind of been the main discussion for everybody, like in terms of inconsistencies, but I think LG's there as well. It's like people were talking about like if they can just beat Elevate for some odd reason, like just kind of get some momentum under them, then they're gonna cruise through the bracket. And that's like I said, that's something that I don't really want to bet a whole lot into is something along those lines. Because
I mean, look at how they were performing in the first.
Exactly. Yeah.
So yeah, no, I think they've definitely been more open. Yeah, interesting. So I guess sticking on the topic of questions from he says, what intangibles do?
So the first thing that I think that Classic kind of brings to the team is that he is like a nice voice, like in terms of like his presence to the lineup is really nice. I think for a team like Luminosity, it's kind of nice to have a person like that. He kind of almost to me acts like a Facento used to for a lot of teams, like not necessarily the leader in this case, but just a voice that's like there, that's willing to kind of do the dirty work if need be. I had a lot of high hopes for Classic this year. I know he's had moments, and it hasn't really worked out to the best. But I think Classic usually thrives on a team that's not, it's kind of hard to judge Classic because I think his intangibles are things that don't always show up on the stat sheet most primarily. I think they're kind of based off of roles. It's based off of unselfishness. It's based off chemistry. He's kind of like the glue to a few of these teams, and I feel like he's almost trying to be glue for a team that's just not possible to mend all that together. So I think he is I would say Classic for me is the definition of a team player. But the problem is whenever you have a group of guys who don't work as a team, being a team player doesn't really mean a whole lot. So, and I'm not saying that LG will be like that for the future. It's just I think he was a very valuable piece on a few teams. In a few prior titles, he looked like an actual top 5, top 10 player. And I was hoping to see that for Black Ops 4 because that would have just made this team so much more scary. But I was a big advocate, coming into this LG team. I like Classic a lot, but I feel like the way that LG needs to work, they need someone like JCap. They need the voice. They need someone to bring them in line. They need almost a coach in game. And that's not what Classic is there to be. He's almost like a priest, the mentality of like, hey, just put me where I need to be and, I'll do what I need to. So that's I would kind of value Classic as like the definition of a team player.
Right. Yeah.
Which you need, sometimes. So.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think, like you said, I was hoping to see kind of the Classic that we have seen, like you said, in previous times. But I deserves and for himself, not to say that LG is a bad team, obviously, or the bad players. But I think his place would be best served on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So next question comes from AKSL. Will FaZe do well next event?
So that's a good question because I've been kind of having the same thought process as well. Like, what FaZe is really going to do. You argue they probably should have beat Luminosity, or and like I said, that hard point that they come out with the game after they beat LG, I thought was kind of like they probably wouldn't have had that same momentum realistically.
Yeah.
So you could argue like how that series would have gone even despite the control. So I'll kind of give them that. Let's say that they do win that series. They go up against a really talented NB team, who they played well against in terms of the pool standing. So I don't know. For me, it's like I feel like FaZe has the capability to do something. I'm worried about like in actuality every role because like they're solid in every role. Like Scraps, for example, the MaDaCs, but like there's not anything that like stands out to me. Like I like Zuma, I like Asim, I think they're good players. So I don't know. For like me, I don't think you could like to say that FaZe will flop after having a top 12 placement. I don't think they're a top 16 team. Like, I think they're probably right around top 12 as of this moment. I don't see them eclipsing top 8 unless we see something dramatic happen. So I think it's kind of hard to say like they'll flop when you could argue that in their minds they probably kind of did. So I think they have a good group though. I think they have a good coach. RJ's a really good coach from what I've heard. I think they have a good staff around him as well. And I feel like they could maybe even over time make a little bit more of an upgrade over time in terms of players or in terms of like how they work as a group. So I feel like they're a good group of players though. But to say that they would flop next event, I think they'll kind of remain where they are. Maybe go up a tier, like place top 8. But yeah, it's just kind of hard to say that they would flop after they place top 12 when there's 16 teams. So
yeah, no, for sure. I think my only issue with the fact that this is a new team. They're all players that are very into and like guys who joined from to make a change.
Yeah.
I'm really happy with the change that they got. So I think the momentum that this team should have had coming into it should have gotten them a little bit further. A little bit. Obviously, time will obviously help as well.
Right.
So, I mean, yeah, I think it's definitely something to see, to keep an eye on. Whether they'll flop, like you said, I don't think so. But again, time will tell.
Definitely.
So the next one is an interesting one. Guigo09 asks, what pros do you think need to hang it up?
Oh, okay. That's an interesting one. I don't know, man. What pros need to hang it up? I want to try to like throw someone under the bus as a joke.
The bus, yeah.
I'm looking through like a list of player names right now. Let's just get JCap out, man. You know what? He's so old. Like, he just better be served as a coach. Just doesn't really deserve to be on. No, obviously, I'm a huge fan. JCap, like,
clip that.
Oh gosh, here we go. Here comes Reddit. Here comes all the clips. No, I mean honestly, like it's kind of hard to like say who needs to like put it up. Essentially,
yeah.
I think there are some players who I look down the list of and I'm like, wow, he'd be a really good coach. I think this guy would be really good. Best served maybe doing something else. But I think it's kind of a hard answer or a hard question to answer. Just because I feel like a lot of them do deserve to be there. So
right,
yeah, absolutely. So next we'll go with one of the questions that came from chat from Purify. He's been in and out quite a lot of the episodes. Good to see him back. He asks, what are your thoughts on Optic? Improved and could have easily won the top. Choked the Arsenal.
So I would say OG's a good team. I think we saw improvements for them, obviously from last tournament. I think it's kind of easy to call that.
Yeah,
that's for sure. But I think a lot of people are kind of basing on the fact of like, oh well, they messed up on this and that's why they lost. It's like, well, they lost. Like I get that point of view, but at the same time, it's like they made some mistakes, which is what every team makes. It's the difference in what one team, like I feel like theirs are just more elevated because of their presence online and because of the way that some of their games are broadcasted and stuff like that. So I feel like their errors are more known, but for the most part, the way that you win a lot of these series is just by making less mistakes than the other team. So I feel like for OG, could they have beaten 100T? Yeah, but I feel like for the most part, like when it came to that E United series, it was just like they just weren't there. Like, and we've never really seen that before. Like always, like E United has struggled versus OG or even top respawn teams in their history. So for them to not easily, but pretty much gracefully make it by OG the way that they did, obviously taking 2 respawns, is something to definitely kind of write home about. So I will say like OG, better spot, but I am a little bit worried for them. I'll say that I'm a little bit worried that they lost, pretty much 3-1, 3-0. I think how they get eliminated. It wasn't close games. It wasn't around 11 that, oh my gosh, if Karma would have looked that way, he would have won the gunfight. No, it was like mistakes that you can't afford to be making versus top tier teams. So
yeah, I think that's but and then so just a couple more questions left. This is probably my favorite one. Comes from Shock No 26. He said, "Did CWL London have the best COD crowd of all time? And what was your jam?"
So I will say, like, people give a lot of credit to London. I get it, but we also need to remember ESWC 2015. That Paris crowd was insane. I don't think they knew 100% what was happening, but they were going crazy as well. I will say, I think London does eclipse them. I think Paris is close, at least from what I remember. Watching that event, how crazy and how groundbreaking it was at that time. And there was a few Anaheim events, like, we talked about like Black Ops 2 Anaheim was like, it wasn't the same, but it was like similar in terms of like how much engaged the crowd was there. But my favorite chant, let's see here. I like Tommy's like little kind of yell that he gave to the crowd about like LG. I thought, and they kept kind of doing that throughout the event as well. I thought that was kind of funny. And they were just saying some like interesting stuff that I just never like heard of before. Like just some chants I've just never really heard in my life. So I like that one. The Maven one was great. I'm trying to think if I'm missing out on one. But like the LG one was probably my favorite. I just love like hearing some banter go back and forth and like kind of getting some boos. Like it's nice to like kind of hear that from time to time. So
I thought that you were gonna say the Maven one for sure.
Maven was great. I will say, like, that's it's always a classic. It's always fun to mess with Clint.
Perfect. And so then the last one I have here actually comes from Hunter. This is he actually stole this one. I ask this question pretty much every week. But do you have any plans to stream? And if so, when?
So I would love to stream. I think that'd be a lot of fun for the most part, and not to be like, oh, well, I'm too busy. But I kind of am kind of busy recently because I do have kind of outside ties with family and girlfriend and school, and then a full-time job and stuff like that. So for me, like, I would love to, and I think in the future it'd be a lot of fun to try to stream, even if it's something related. But I kind of get burnout from time to time by being on camera sometimes in terms of like being on actual broadcasts, and it's just like not always fun to like put on not a persona, because it's not really a persona, but it's like not always fun to just be like this in front of a camera and try to like like, oh, this is fun, this is amazing. Like, it's nice to just kind of play games, just kind of relax. Also, I'm not good enough at video games. I think that people would be interested enough to watch. I think I'd be kind of like a Tim the Tap Man, like, hey, you're just here for my personality. Hopefully, like, you stay. But yeah, I would definitely be interested in streaming. I'm just not sure if it would logistically work for me right now and whatnot. But I think it'd be fun. I think it'd be great. I think streaming is great. That's what I watch all the time. So,
how often do you get to play games?
I would say every, maybe, and it's kind of strange, but like maybe every 2 days I'll maybe have like an hour or two to kind of hop on, maybe play some Fortnite, play some COD. At work sometimes, which is perk of the job. I try to do some research, for casts I have coming up. So for COD, for example, I was trying to play some Hardpoint, play some Search and Destroy, learn maybe some tricks and stuff like that. Fortnite, try to do the same thing, and for other games that we've dived into as well. So yeah, I would say like a few hours, maybe every few days, for the most part. But that's kind of the way it works right now. Wish it was more, that's for sure. But priorities.
It's funny that you mentioned Tim earlier, just because Maxie and I are actually both pretty big Tim the Tapman fans. So,
oh yeah, love Tim,
love. So funny.
It comes from the COD scene as well, which kind of makes me a little bit kind of in favor of Tim more than other people, I guess. So
yeah, a lot of people forget that he was big streamer of Call of Duty goes back in the day.
Yep.
And the Tapman versus Nex.
Oh yeah. I haven't heard Nex's name in a while. St. Louis native, by the way. Good old Nex.
Yeah.
That's true. Very nice. So just as we kind of wrap up now, one of the things we do like to allow our guests to do is kind of plug themselves a little bit. So where can our viewers find you? What are you doing right now? And go ahead, plug away.
Well, I appreciate it. Yeah. You guys can obviously follow me on Twitter. At LandO. You can feel free to check out my YouTube show as well. Talk about Call of Duty esports stuff, which is the esports dispatch. try to upload, or rather try to make these segments that are essentially kind of related to more of a sports feel. I have a huge passion for sports broadcasting, sportscasting, and kind of having shows, debatable shows, things like that that I'm looking to try and add in the future. But I think the Dispatch is kind of like one of those first foot forward type things where I think it could be the future of content, esports content, Call of Duty esports content to be more specifically, just because that's something that I'm super passionate about. So if you guys would like to, you can feel free to check out the esports Dispatch and follow me on Twitter at LandO. So yeah.
Great. Thank you so much for taking the time to come on. We really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Well, I appreciate you guys for asking me on, because I really enjoy podcasts like this. I've done a few in the past, and it's always nice to even have at times some community. Like, there were times where I'd have some casters kind of be brought in. It's just nice to know that people are watching it and stuff like that. So really happy to be a part of it, and to try to help out other content. I think it's important to be competitive, but I think it's also important to try and support other shows and other things that are out there and stuff like that. So I appreciate you guys for asking me on. It was a great time.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Thank you so much.
Thank you again. And I really glad that you did obviously make it on, and we will at some point have you on again in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. Would love to be.
All right. Thank you so much.
So if you want to go ahead and hop off there, Landon. Go.
Okay, doke.
But yeah, so have a good night, and thank you once again.
Absolutely, guys. Thank you so much for having me. Have a great night.
You too. All right.
Another great guest. I feel like we've had so many good guests.
Indeed. I think it's one of those things, right? At this point, you never know how people are when you're seeing them on the camera and on stage, but then when you actually get and have a good conversation, and you realize, like, oh yeah, they are just another human.
Right. He actually is a really nice guy. Yeah. Surprise.
Yeah.
Anyway, so quickly, I want to bold prediction time. We have the matches starting next week. I'm going to post the link to the schedule in the chat really quick, just to make sure you have it.
Yep.
And
I got it.
Perfect. Who's going 4-0? Who's going 0-4?
All right. 4-0.
I'll give you mine while you're looking at it. I have Evil Geniuses going 0-4. I think they're an easy pick, but I just, even with the change, I just don't know what more you can get from them. Just shout out to Hunter. I would love to see UIU going 4-0. Let's see it. Big limelight's on you right now. So, going 4-0. Let me see. They could win that. Yeah. I have Genji going 4-0.
Okay.
And I'm gonna go out and say it right now. Genji's winning Anaheim.
Okay.
I'm gonna add that to my document, and we'll come back.
So 0-4. I'm gonna go EG.
Okay.
And then 4-0. Definitely got to put UIU up there. But then honestly,
if you say Genji, I'm hanging up right
now. Wait, man. So I don't think anybody, unless UIU get 4-0, I don't think anybody.
All right, I'm putting you down as UIU. It's on the record.
All right, let's go. I'm down.
Perfect.
This is the week.
Their week. Let's see it. So, do we have a guest lined up for next week?
Not as it stands right now. As you know, I'm back into move of setup, moved and everything now, so I can start looking on that as soon as possible. But yeah, so not right now, but as soon as we do know, we'll be announced.
What is that Twitter so that our viewers can go and find out who our next guest is going to be?
Tell you.
Go ahead.
Twitter is at the CWL Pod.
And what about your Twitter? What's that?
and is MaDaC FPS. You can find me on all social medias FPS, so that Twitter, PlayStation Network, if you the Instagram.
I think you did.
I did. And then YouTube, you can find me just at.
Mm-hmm. And where can people watch and listen to this show if they weren't able to catch it live?
And find it everywhere. So obviously, for anybody who's watching right now, you know that it's streamed live on the Twitch channel, but then the next day at 10:30 a.m. standard time, we premiere it on my YouTube channel, which again, MaDaC, and we also put it live across Spotify, iTunes, Google Music, Google Play Music, whatever it's called, and SoundCloud. Is that?
Yeah.
Spotify, iTunes, Google, and SoundCloud. There you go.
Also, you say we, but I literally do nothing. You do all of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, where can we find you, Stoney?
Just on Twitter. Stoney with a 7 instead of a T. Would love to get OG Stoney, but I don't know if I mentioned that, but the guy actually blocked me when I tried to talk to him about switching out his username. But
that's hilarious.
Yeah.
I did not know that, but I love it.
Yes.
I don't blame it. I would block you too if I could.
All right. Been a great show.
All right.
Thanks to everyone that watched and listens. Also, don't forget
you're dead at this point, so
audibletrial.com/the CWL podcast and click the Humble Bundle link below the stream or YouTube video. And always remember to run it up. #OakBoys. What is it? Enable.
Shout out to John Robinson.
Yeah. Oak Boys Worldwide. Shout out to John Robinson. Shout out Nade Shot. Mic drop. Boom. I've got to be up in 5 hours. See you later. Bye.
Hold up. One more thing before we head out.
Okay.
I just want to thank everybody for following the stream as well. We got Twitch LandO, Astronaut Shane, The Abstract, Am I Allowed Here, Godburner 2018 Mania, Wonka _0077, and Ronald.
Shout out those everybody. People. Thank you.
All right. So
now goodbye.
That is going to be it for the week. Thank you. Bye bye.